As China becomes increasingly aggressive toward Taiwan, the United States is preparing for a possible war and is sending troops to Taiwan. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Taiwan, an independent democratic country, is at risk of falling to authoritarianism. The Chinese Communist Party, despite never actually governing the island of Taiwan, considers it part of its territory. Taiwan represents a crucial strategic position in Asia. If the People's Republic of China is able to take the island, it can project military power outwards into the Pacific, while securing control of the waters of the East China Sea and South China Sea. For years, the Chinese Communist Party tried to use economic leverage to gain influence in Taiwan, even suggesting it could be governed under the one country, two system model, the same one the CCP uses in Hong Kong. That didn't work out too well for Hong Kong, as I saw firsthand in 2019. Which is why the Communist Party has vowed to take control of Taiwan, if necessary, by force. Over the past several years, China's People's Liberation Army has made incursions near Taiwan, and they've gotten larger, more frequent, and more aggressive. Last summer, after then U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, China launched live-fire drills and missiles around Taiwan in what amounted to a temporary blockade, as some ship and air traffic were warned away. At this point, China has thrown so many temper tantrums that it doesn't even faze Taiwan anymore. They're like, "Are you done? Cool, flight's taking off in 5, gang." Last month, Chinese vessels even severed several undersea internet cables connecting to Taiwan. In the face of all this, the United States is becoming an increasingly staunch supporter of Taiwan. So staunch that the U.S. still doesn't officially recognize Taiwan, which is kind of like seeing a kid getting bullied and saying, "I got your back, Kyle. My name is Brian." Whatever, Kyle. But the U.S. does have a law called the Taiwan Relations Act. It says the U.S. is committed to the preservation of human rights there, and that the U.S. will not only arm Taiwan for its self-defense, but also resist any resort to force or other forms of coercion that would jeopardize the security or social or economic system of the people of Taiwan. The U.S. is willing to arm the country of Taiwan and even possibly fight to protect the country of Taiwan. They'll do just about everything except say Taiwan is a country. The U.S. has been backing up their words with action, though. The Trump administration deployed about 24 U.S. Special Forces to Taiwan to train local Marines. The Biden administration doubled that number. How nice to see that Taiwan is something that even Trump and Biden agree on. Sad that it has to be something that could spark World War III. More recently, the U.S. has also been building up its military bases and troop presence in the area around Taiwan, the Philippines, Guam, and Japan. For more on that, check out this recent episode. I'll put a link below. And now, the U.S. is directly increasing its military presence in Taiwan itself by quadrupling the number of troops there. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. As China becomes more aggressive, the U.S. is more than quadrupling the current number of troops deployed in Taiwan. Now, these aren't big numbers. A year ago, there were roughly 30 U.S. troops deployed in Taiwan. Now, the U.S. plans to deploy between 100 and 200 troops to the island in the coming months. I've seen more people are showing of Morbius during the re-release. But even 100 to 200 troops is valuable. It's the largest deployment of U.S. troops in Taiwan for decades. With more U.S. troops deployed in Taiwan, any attempts by the Chinese Communist Party to attack runs a greater risk of killing American soldiers, which could trigger war with the United States, and that's something the CCP desperately wants to avoid. The U.S. troops seem to be composed of Special Operations Forces and Marines. They're there to train Taiwanese soldiers. And in addition to conducting training in Taiwan, the Michigan National Guard is also training a contingent of the Taiwanese military, including during annual exercises with multiple countries at Camp Grayling in northern Michigan, according to people familiar with the training. And if there's anything to fight for, it's the beautiful Michigan scenery. The training will be focused not only on U.S. weapons systems, but on military maneuvers to protect against a potential Chinese offensive. The Pentagon has in the past been in favor of a porcupine strategy for Taiwan, essentially arming it up so much that any attempt by China to attack would be too painful, which makes more sense than what I originally thought porcupine strategy meant, which was airdropping porcupines. I think that'd be just as effective, though. Officials say the troop increase was planned for months, so it was not a response to the recent Chinese spy balloon. But the timing is a bit suspicious, given that the best defense against a balloon would be porcupines. The Pentagon didn't comment directly on the troop increase, but a Pentagon spokesman did say our commitment to Taiwan is rock solid and contributes to the maintenance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and within the region. Taiwan's foreign minister and National Security Council chief also met with high-level U.S. officials in Washington recently. So it definitely seems like the U.S. believes the threat of Chinese invasion is a real possibility. I know to many that sounds unbelievable, but remember, the U.S. was warning Russia would invade Ukraine for quite some time before it actually happened. And a lot of people didn't believe that either, because who could possibly imagine brutal authoritarians with a history of human rights violations doing something so rude? Invade a sovereign nation? No. That doesn't sound like something Putin would do. Again. But the U.S. is trying to play a delicate balancing game. The goal is to show enough support for Taiwan to deter China from invading, but not so much support that it triggers China to invade. One of the officials who spoke to the Wall Street Journal said, one of the difficult things to determine is what really is objectionable to China. That's not difficult at all. The only thing that's objectionable to China is everything. Mystery solved. The official continued, we don't think at the levels that we're engaged in and are likely to remain engaged in the near future that we are anywhere close to a tipping point for China. But that's a question that is constantly being evaluated and looked at, specifically with every decision involving support to Taiwan. For instance, if the U.S. did formally recognize Taiwan as a country, would the Chinese Communist Party respond with an invasion? That's why these decisions can't be made unilaterally, but in communication with Taiwan. And again, there's always the possibility that Taiwan will decide it's time to retake the mainland. And we've anticipated this extremely unlikely scenario with these absolutely real West Taiwan travel posters that you can buy right now on our website, chinauncensored.tv/merchandise. YouTube's frequent demonetization and age restriction of our episodes have forced us to become very creative with how we fund the show. Very creative. Ever wonder what I look like without a tie? You're going to have to pay to see that. Of course, the biggest part of the budget to keep making China Uncensored comes directly from viewers like you, who contribute to the show through the crowdfunding website Patreon. Link is below. As a thank you to them, I answer their questions on the show. Today's question comes from Austin Koffold. Do you have a bunker ready to go to on a moment's notice? Of course, Austin. Where do you think I filmed from? I haven't seen the light of day in 4 years. My tan comes from a spray bottle. Thanks for your question and your support. And if you want to ask me a question and join us in our fight against the Chinese Communist Party, all it takes is as little as $1 an episode on Patreon. You can also set a monthly limit. That's patreon.com/China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.